The big city snow drought is over. Last night, and this morning's storm system took all the big cities out and gave them some snow. And now we've got another system that's coming in for Friday. And in between, it's cold outside. So we'll talk about all of this and much more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top. No, it's not pinned to the top of the chat board. It's on the descriptor to this podcast. Use the coupon code I want a weather station, and if you do, you will get.
You'll get 10% off.
Yes, you will. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes.
Wrong box. There you go. All right. I'm 15 degrees here and dropping in North Georgia. The mountains got snow. Actually, I could see the snow falling in the mountains at a distance because they were all in a big haze. But I did not see any. However, no, we don't have to talk or listen to people talk about the snow drought anymore, Joseph. Done.
701 day, and finally it came to an end. I believe 1.6 inches fell, but 1.2 fell in the hours after midnight last night. So that officially, for the first time in almost 2 years, means that Central Park finally had more than an inch of snow in one sitting. And but actually, Joe,
Philadelphia had over 3.
I will tell you this where I am. Started snowing here around 10 or 11 o'clock last night. Puffy, light, powdery snow. And as we mentioned yesterday, really of no great intensity. I mean, it must have been, visibility is ranging between 1 and 2 miles. And this morning when I woke up, we had maybe an inch accumulation. This is from all through the night, snow
Right.
falling. And then along about 9 or 10 o'clock, guess what? We started hearing little pellets on the window. Looked out the window, and sleet was obviously mixing in. About 11:30 this morning, the snow, which was very fine-grained, suddenly became as large as nickels and quarters. And that was the signal that we were going to make a changeover, and sure enough, we did. Right after that, by noontime, it was just plain sleet. And in the final outcome here, we had 2 inches of snow with about 1 or 2 tenths of sleet on top. And we had gotten rid of the snow. We actually broke out the snowblower. Usually I don't break out the snowblower when it's less than 3 inches, but it had become kind of a semi-heavy type of snow. So I said, I'm not going to deal with this. I'll just bring the blower out, and we blew it. But then after we had gotten rid of the snow, the sleet just kept coming down, and then my driveway got coated with a covering of sleet, and so we have to go out and scrape that away because my daughter. Well, I think we convinced my daughter. My daughter wanted to leave to go back to New Paltz, which is north of here tonight. But we've gotten so many people, including my son, saying, it's so icy out there, it's dangerous, and everything else. So
She was convinced.
Sometimes the small storms are the ones that give you the most problems, and
Right.
this is
a lot of places got freezing rain out of this.
Rain, yeah,
In New Jersey, New York City was freezing rain for a number of hours. I also saw some, parts of Long Island, and then some places along the immediate coast changed to rain, and then the temperature dropped below freezing, and it went back to freezing rain, and then a little burst of snow on top of that. Yeah, I've always thought that put down a 6, 7, 8 inch snowfall, whatever it's going to be, but let it be all snow. When it starts going to this sleet and freezing rain, and it never really changes to rain, but then never just goes back to something else, it's so it's so problematic. It's so difficult to clean. You really can't do much with it. And now, of course, with temperatures falling, I mean, you're headed down into the teens tonight. Just about everybody's going to be in the teens to near 20. Thankfully, at least there's a bit of a wind, so that helps to evaporate and dry up some of the roads. But it's a close call. It's definitely a close call. So now we've got another one for Friday, and I don't know. I haven't, Joe and I usually don't talk about these things ahead of time, so I'm just kind of curious about what your thoughts are with respect to Friday.
I didn't really think too much of it. I think that whatever we do see on Friday will be primarily from the New York metropolitan area and points south. And where I am up here, I was talking to Renata about this earlier. I said, for us, if we could just have nothing more than just some occasional snow showers, maybe a steadier snow south of 287 or down toward New York and point south of there. This may actually favor folks along the Jersey Shore more for significant snow as opposed to places up in the Hudson Valley.
Right.
At least that's what it looks right now. I'm not making any accumulation projections, so.
Yes, I know there's a demand for first call maps. Yeah, when they come close together like this, I was still working on the first one today with a lot of my snow removal guys. So I really didn't have time to think too much about what to do with the second. I do think that it may wind up being another one similar to this in terms of the snow amounts you might go for, which is that somebody might get 2 or 3 inches out of it. I think there's a few variables that you can make a case that maybe somebody will wind up with more, but it's uh, not something I'm in a position to sort of work out at this time. I think we're going to see some accumulating snow on Friday ahead of the last shot of Arctic air before we start to moderate as we go into next week.
Right, and I'm looking forward to that moderation. I think Monday we're probably going to get above freezing here, perhaps for the first time since Sunday afternoon of this past weekend. And Tuesday we'll go for broke. We'll go for low to mid 40s. But the key, as I said yesterday, Joe, or last night, is the fact that we're going to have gusty winds to deal with from Friday on through the weekend, which is going to make it feel all the colder. Those winds will abate noticeably on Monday. That combined with temperatures going above freezing will make it a day that'll be much less harsh compared to later this week and into the weekend. And by Tuesday, it's going to feel, my goodness, maybe people will be dancing in the streets. It'll only be in the low to mid 40s, but it'll feel so much warmer as compared to what we're going to be dealing with in the coming days ahead.
Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And for those of you watching in the background, a big hellos to you.
By the way, Tom Contino, he's saying, Joe Rayo, can I let it get cold before you start looking forward to milder air? You are a cold weather hater. Hey, Tom.
Oh, God, these people are so emotional.
No, but you know what we call cold weather here in the Rayo household, and especially when it gets really cold, we call that hug your honey night.
Ah.
And I look forward to that. So
nice.
if you think I hate cold weather, and what's even nicer is that the executive producer, can we have one of those what Lisa gave us, those big those hot chocolate balls or whatever like that. So it's going to be a fun evening here. I mean, between the hot chocolate and later tonight, hug your honey. So Tom, you are dead wrong when you say I hate cold weather. Let it get cold tonight. The heck.
Why not? Well, so yes, welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And for those of you who are watching in the background, big hellos to you too. If you like the show, hit the like button. We're on Sundays through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. with the occasional Friday and Saturday. So we may be on Friday. We'll probably make that decision tomorrow. Turn your notifications on, hit the subscribe button, and you'll never miss our program. We have not been doing. I actually had a message from Scott today. His mother is doing well. She'd had some kidney issues, but she seems to be doing much better. So that's good news. And we haven't been doing Briller Jeopardy at the end of the show because we've had so much weather going on. So we've put it on hold until things settle down. So the way things look, we'll probably bring it back on Sunday. So anyway, I'm starting off, Joe, with the low temperature forecasts for much of the eastern and southern United States, and all the big double-digit below zeros are gone. In fact, I'm having trouble finding even any below zero temperatures being forecast. However, there's a huge area of single digits, and they go from up from Maine down. The core of this cold air mass actually is running along and west of the Appalachians as opposed to the east side. What's down the east side is a slightly more moderate version of it. So the leftover double digit below zero air is moderated, but it's pushed single digits down deep into Alabama, Mississippi, uh, Arkansas, all these places, Kentucky, Tennessee, all forecasting lows tonight that are going to be down in single digits. New Orleans, a forecast low of 28, which is cold. Dallas, 16 uh, points northward. You go up into Oklahoma City at 14. St. Louis, 9. Chicago's actually, there's a couple of below zero numbers. Chicago, -2. There actually are some below zero numbers in parts of Wisconsin and back up into Minnesota. But it's a small area. But nonetheless, it is cold everywhere east of the Rockies, and in some cases even west of the Rockies. And we've got another storm system to bring one last shot down Friday night into Saturday. That one, Joe, that comes down the east side of the Appalachians. And I keep looking at some of the temperature guidance. I still think it's too high. I'm thinking single digits and low teens Saturday morning, and highs upper teens and low 20s Saturday afternoon.
You might very well be right, Joe, that we may very well be in the single digits, or may I say, possibly the tingle digits
I I, I
by
always
Saturday.
I always call them the dingle sidgets.
The DingleFID.
The dingle sidgets.
And you know what? The thing is, regardless now of how the winter turns out, and incidentally, yesterday we reached the halfway point of meteorological winter. Regardless of how the winter is from here on in, people, especially in the Midwest and even down in the deep South, are going to remember this as the frigid winter. Why? They're going to remember these incredibly cold temperatures that covered their area, if not just for only a few days, but that kind of I think gives the impression, when you look back upon the winter of 23, 24, as, oh my goodness, it was very cold. I remember one night it got down to like -5, or it was a cold winter. So again, regardless of how warm it gets next week and whether or not we don't see anything similar to this in terms of an Arctic or polar outbreak for the rest of the winter, people will be biased, or will remember what we've just gone through, or what we're going through now, and that will paint the picture of, hey, it was a cold winter this past year. So,
Yep. Well, we've still got a long way to go. It's the 16th of January. Winter weather advisories are now down in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. I was noting last night that it's been a long time since we've seen widespread winter weather advisories from Maine all the way down into the Appalachians and across parts of the Tennessee Valley. There's just one long connected area of winter weather advisories, and even some winter storm warnings, which actually they wound up putting them up for Washington and Baltimore last night after the show was over, because that area got into a bit of a jackpot zone, and Baltimore was up to half a foot in Baltimore, and pretty close to it in areas around Washington D.C. So there was the jackpot zone. Our accumulations here, we were thinking of in the order of 2 to 3. Some places a little bit more, some places a little bit less, and that actually worked out perfectly, pretty much. So I'm happy about that, because we always try to, we don't just make a forecast and then forget about it. We try to nail it as best we can. And forecasting snow is always difficult, because you're never going to get it 100% right. You're happy if you get 85 or 90% of it right. Winter storm warnings are still up for central and northern Maine. Advisories back to New Hampshire and Vermont. In the west, we have winter storm warnings across Montana into Washington State, parts of Oregon, western Idaho, western Wyoming, and also snaking down a few winter storm warnings up in north central Colorado. Hard freeze warnings up across the south. The light blue, those are wind chill advisories up through the Great Lakes, down the Appalachians, and right here in northern Georgia. So, certainly evidence of the cold air that we've been dealing with. And as we check out the satellite loop, and we'll get it moving here. I was trying to update it real fast, and you see all the clouds in the northeast. Also, clouds that stream back through the Great Lakes, the plains, and into the Pacific Northwest. Um, but we do have some drying going on finally, and of course, the precipitation is over. Next 2 days look pretty calm, correct?
Yeah, and I'm hoping, doing a little scraping before the show, and I'm hoping that we get bright sunshine tomorrow because any little bit of blacktop that shows will work in concert with bright sunshine to help the meltdown or the melting when it comes to blacktop. It doesn't necessarily have to be above freezing, but we are hoping for a little bit of a helping hand from Mother Nature tomorrow. But as I said, Joe, earlier, we were above freezing late on Sunday of this past weekend, and now I doubt very much, at least locally where I am, we're going to go above freezing again until probably next month. That's a pretty long stretch of sub-freezing temperatures.
Yep. Radar tonight. Just about 2 hours ago, I noticed right around the Albany area, there was some areas that were snowing at the rate of 1 to 3 inches an hour, and some of this backside snow that was occurring there. But that is, just about pulled out. Well, it's now on the east side of Albany and moving into western Massachusetts and southwestern Vermont. Snows in central and northern Vermont. You can see the snow up through Maine. A lot of freezing rain fell for a number of hours in Boston today. That is pretty much done. And of course, it's all done here in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. The radars are quiet in the east. But here comes the next round of moisture into the west from southern Washington state down into northern California, which includes heavy rains and some heavy snows in the mountains. Let's run through WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, and what they're thinking in terms of precipitation over the next few days. And obviously, we don't have any issues here in the east tomorrow or Thursday. This is for tomorrow in the west, where some areas are going to pick up about an inch and a half plus along the Pacific Northwest coast, and then some leftover. We're talking a tenth of an inch or less in the northeast. Then we'll look at Thursday into Friday. Now, I'm sorry, let me take that back. I jumped to the wrong map. This is Thursday into Friday. You start to see some moisture. This, I think, will probably be for later Thursday and Thursday night. From Illinois to Pennsylvania, western New York, and then also from Kentucky down south into Mississippi. Anywhere from a few hundredths to maybe a tenth to less than a quarter of an inch of liquid precipitation. And I think from northern Tennessee northward, that's all going to be snow. Now, day 3 is Thursday night into Friday night. And WPC has a tenth to a quarter of an inch just north of New York City, right along the Connecticut coast, New Jersey south of Route 80 and points southward. And it even has a quarter to a half an inch kind of just touching the New Jersey coast. So this goes from 7 p.m. Thursday to 7 p.m. Friday. And then you got to add to that day 4, which has still some leftover precip. So it looks to me, Joe, like they're thinking maybe 2 to 3 or maybe even 4/10 of liquid. My question is, because of the fact that we're going to be doing this with colder air that's going to be getting drawn down on the backside, it's not going to be something that comes in a rush, but I think this is going to be more of a powdery type snow. So it could be one of these snowfalls where the snow ratios, instead of being, say, 10 to 1,
Factor.
yeah, they might be 12 to 1 or even 14 to 1. So you wind up with 4/10 of an inch of liquid. If your ratios are 14 to 1, you're going to wind up with close to 6 inches, if that happens.
Right.
I don't think it's impossible given the setup.
Yeah, the other thing I was looking at with this next system, Joe, the FGen or the Omega, there really isn't all that much to write home about. So if you're looking for some dynamics to help try to push these values up, it doesn't look like that's going to be the story, or that's going to be the case. again, we may be looking at what I was looking at last night, a gentle, light snow, which lasted through much of the night and really didn't amount to more than an inch or so. But, if it's colder and a puffier, fluffier type of snow, what was 1 inch last night might translate into maybe a couple of inches on Friday night. We'll see. And again, we're still a few days away. Tomorrow, we may have a more definitive idea as to exactly what this next coastal system may do. Now, there are people on the chat board making reference to the lack of a bell because we have hit 100 likes, and a lot of you are saying, well, why isn't Joe Rayo ringing the bell? And we made a discovery before the show tonight, since I'm working tonight again off of a laptop and not my usual desktop. I'm hoping I'll be back on the desktop tomorrow night, Joe. But it seems that if you ring the bell using a laptop, and even with you have a harmonica there, for whatever reason, it doesn't pick up. You can't hear that. I mean, I'm ringing the bell right now.
I hear it. I hear it faintly. I just heard
You
it
hear it
faintly.
faintly. All right. Well, anyway, for those of you who hear it faintly,
It's like Santa Claus in the distance.
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we do acknowledge that we have gotten to 100 likes tonight.
All right. Okay, WPC has come into range for Friday. So this forecast goes from tonight through Friday evening. So they've got a forecast. Earlier today when I was looking at it, it was hard because you had some of the stuff from today mixed with stuff that was coming up. But this is a cleaner map this evening. It's not completely clean, but when I say clean, I mean the fact that we're just talking about one single event. But for the most, because there's some lake effect in there too. But the folks at WPC, not the darkest blue is 40% for at least 2 inches, and that goes up north of you, Joe. Looks like it gets up to about Dutchess County, and just south of that is the 50% line. And I often like to use that 50% line as where if I were drawing a map, that's where I would focus my 2-inch line. So you see it here, nosing across Long Island, covering most of New Jersey except the extreme south, and much of eastern and central Pennsylvania down into northern Maryland. And then you get into the 80% to 100% probability in Ohio, down the West Virginia mountains, and points northward up through western Pennsylvania and into southwestern New York. Again, some of what's up here is lake effect, but I'm going to put the probability of at least 4, see what they have, and at least for now, WPC in that green has a 20 to 30% chance for at least 4 across central and eastern Pennsylvania, the northern half of New Jersey, so let's say north of Route 195 to New York City and Long Island. So that's not a low number, okay? That's a 30 that green is, I'm sorry, 20 to 30% chance for at least 4. So 3 days out, that's not a particularly low number. So maybe they're thinking along the same lines as I am with regards to snow ratios and so on. And there's a leftover long range day on the long range WPC map, which is coming up now. And as soon as it loads, there we go. So WPC, this was updated this morning, shortly before 12 noon, and they have a pretty east-west area of 10 to 30% for at least a few inches. So this kind of goes along with what they did on now, what was now on the short range map. So I don't see this becoming anything out of control. But it could be at least a repeat performance of what we had today, minus the sleet and minus the freezing rain, because I really think this is going to be it's snow or nothing with this one.
Right. Well, I said earlier that I use the snowblower because the consistency of the snow had gotten considerably heavier, especially so with the sleet mixing in. If I get 2 inches on Thursday night or into Friday or whatever, I get 2 inches and it's a puffy, powdery, low density snow. I'll be very happy to just take a snow shovel and push it aside. But we haven't seen very many of those. I mean, up here where I am, I've kind of forgotten. I used to, Joe, and I haven't done this in a few years. You know, there were some occasions where I had like 2, 3 inches of puffy, powdery, talcum powder type snow. I didn't use the snow blower. I used the leaf blower to get rid
Yeah.
of the snow. I mean, that's how quickly. But you can't do that when it's like today or last a week ago Saturday when you got that mushy, slushy type of heavy, wet snow around. When it's difficult just to lift with a shovel. And we haven't had too many of those. All of these storms that we've had in last couple of years have been, you know, events where they've been heavy, wet snow as opposed to the puffy, powdery snow.
Now, going for the next weather system, here's the way the upper air looks like, and we've got this very deep trough in the eastern part of the United States, which now is responsible for the colder air getting as far south. That lifts up, and then the upper low with this winds up stretching back to just north of Minnesota. In fact, north of Lake Superior, see there's like a little closed upper low there. It's very small, but it's right there. Okay. And that trough is going to swing around, and then the whole thing is going to bodily move southeastward. And one of the things I noticed today was the fact that the model seems to be, yesterday and last night, um, it looked like the whole thing was just going to slide and there wasn't going to be much of anything, uh, as opposed to what it was about 5 days ago, which actually showed a rather dynamic look. Now it seems to be going back toward that more dynamic look, but not all the way back. But it's certainly far enough back to have an event, and you can see what happens here with this next trough. It starts to drop southeastward, and there's actually, this little arm here. This is Friday afternoon. There's a little arm right there, a little negatively tilted arm. The thing is, it's not going to lift up. The whole thing is sliding eastward. So uh, all the intensification of this low that's going to develop near the coast and move out is going to happen offshore. But I think there's enough here on the upper air. And the one thing I want to be a little careful about, I saw a hint of this on one run, was that one of the icon runs today formed a little upper low in western Pennsylvania, like right in here, and it kind of held it together as it moved it eastward across New Jersey. If something like that were to happen, you have to be a little careful because that's where you wind up. You put out a general forecast in a situation like this, and you would say, let's say you'd say 2 to 4. But if something like that were to happen, you get a little crazy upper low that just rolls along, and very, relatively small scale feature. That's where you wind up where somebody gets a jackpot zone, and you'll hear that, a small area got 6 or 7 or even 8 inches. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I could kind of see how it could happen. And certainly one of the global models did suggest that. So I want to be a little careful here, but if everything just kind of goes along smoothly with no complications, I think a fair 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 4 might be a number that you might throw out there for this as it moves along. And then we get the whole trough moves out now, so we get into a ridge position here in the eastern part of the United States. The ridge is off in the Bahamas for next week. The only thing about this, Joe, is that the northwest flow from Canada, relatively speaking, is not all that far away, and I just wonder whether we could get eventually a setup, as you see toward the end of the following week. The models are showing some kind of deep trough dropping down into eastern Canada, where we could have maybe some kind of big high that comes down, but only in the northeast. Everybody else would be on the mild side, but we wouldn't be. So I want to be a little careful of that. Otherwise, I think the weather's going to be, relatively benign, and it does appear like it wants to go back to, um, I wouldn't say what we have now, but something closer to normal, um, longer term as we move into the first part of February.
Climate Prediction Center has on both 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day temperature probability outlook a good part of the country above normal. And in our neck of the woods here in the Northeast, depending upon which map you're looking at, it ranges anywhere between 60 to 80% probability of above normal temperatures. There's no sign of any cold projection of temperatures through at least the 30th of January. So,
And that makes
uh,
sense.
and that's, and like I said, when you get acclimated to what we're dealing with now and in the days to come, once we get to next Monday and beyond, it's going to feel, it's like springtime.
Yep.
And thank you, Leon Probitsky, for hitting Super Chat.
Oh, thank you, Leon. All right, so here's our storm pulling out, cold air for Wednesday and Thursday, and now some of that energy begins to swing around from the Great Lakes. You see a little bit of Gulf moisture there coming into Alabama and Mississippi, some snow in Tennessee and Kentucky. This is at 1 a.m. Friday, and there's a little low off the North Carolina coast. It's kind of disjointed because all the energy is, all the energy is still pretty far to the west, and yet your surface low is forming, already on the North Carolina coast Thursday night, and that surface low goes out. So it's actually, you know what it is, Joe? I think this is really more about the upper trough and the fact that we'll probably have a northeast wind coming in off the ocean during Thursday night and Friday. So you could have a northeast wind coming in off the warmer ocean into the cold air that's only going to get progressively colder as we go through the day. So it's, to me, it's more about the upper trough and maybe some ocean effect that's going to be producing this area of snow rather than the low itself that forms, because that's way out there.
Right.
You see how separate that is? All the moisture with the low is really well offshore, and it's more about the upper trough and the northeast wind, a little, like as I said, described it as a little bit of ocean effect here that causes this area of snow to break out. And it is getting progressively colder as the low goes out. Those thicknesses start to fall, and this is my argument for colder temperatures on Saturday because of the fact that when you look at the isobars here and where the high is, I mean, we're going to have a north wind going from eastern Canada all the way down into the middle and South Atlantic states. I mean, that's usually how we see our some of our coldest temperatures.
A name that I do not recognize, but I'm seeing for the first time on the chat board, Doug Crumb hitting Super
Oh, I know
Chat.
Doug. Doug's from down here. Thank you,
Oh,
Doug. Doug
thank you. Thank you so
Doug
much.
watches. Doug watches from time to time. He's one of the known lurkers in the background because I know he lurks. But I appreciate that, Doug. Thank you very much for hitting Super Chat, and I hope you're warm where you are because I'm 14 now. I just lost another degree here in the North Georgia mountains. So
I was 14 once.
yeah, we all were many moons ago. So this will be, one of the interesting things I saw on the surface, just to touch on this, was the fact that, look at this big high that comes down at 150 hours it's from eastern Canada. There's a 1048 high, that gets up into eastern Canada, and it actually makes for next Wednesday, makes some snow for upstate New York and for maybe for New England, particularly central and northern New England. I thought that was kind of interesting if it holds up. And then that goes out, and then another big high comes down. This one's another 46 plus high, and it makes a bit more of a dent into the northeast. The GFS actually generates snow and sleet on my birthday next Saturday over northern New Jersey, Long Island, and uh, sleet and freezing rain in southern New Jersey and back through western and central Pennsylvania. So that was kind of a, you know, that's the only way that we could wind up getting something in this moderation pattern next week. If somehow you get, cold, very cold air from Canada and very strong high pressure that builds into eastern Canada like this and, basically funnels cold air southward, particularly at low levels. So that might be something interesting to that could happen down the road. But a lot of things have to go right or wrong, depending on your perspective, in order for something like that to get pulled off. But I wouldn't say it's impossible.
Incidentally, along with Leon Probitsky and Doug Crumb, we also have Brandon Doherty now checking in on the chat board with Super Chat hit. And he says, we've had 4 inches, Joe and Joe. Sounds like he's
Thank
rather
you.
excited about that.
Thank you. We're back up full screen. Um, I don't know about you, but these last 2 weeks have wiped me out. I don't have snow and ice to clean up, but you do.
Yes, it's and it's more of a scrape situation. I just got to go out and scrape a little bit more on the driveway, and also I have to scrape because it's garbage night tonight.
Ah,
So I have to put the garbage. I have to go down to the end of the driveway and put the garbage out on Tuesday night, and hopefully they'll be able to come tomorrow and get take it all.
yeah,
Did you say we're back full screen? Because
yeah. You'll catch up.
I don't see.
You'll catch up. You're about 40 seconds
Uh,
behind. Um, one of the things I noticed tonight, because Doug reminded me of this. He's on the chat board too, saying he's shivering, and I'm sure you are. Um, that was why I happened to catch one of the Atlanta news stations weathercasts as I was flipping channels, and what I found so interesting was that all I kept asking myself, all I kept asking when I was watching says, "Can you tell me what the temperatures are going to be?" And all they did was they did an hour by hour. I'm sorry, first an hour by hour wind chill. You know, the wind chill at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and so on. Like, okay. Then it came to the broader forecast. The wind chill. What's it going to feel like tonight? What's it going to feel like tomorrow? What's it going to feel like tomorrow night? What's it going to feel like on Thursday? Every once in a while, the weathercaster would mention a temperature, a low of this or a high of that, but it was all about wind chill in the forecast. Now I get the wind makes it feel colder. I'm not denying that, but can we have the temperatures, please? Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Except now it's always about how you feel. Okay, how you feel? It's 10 degrees, but which is very cold here. Okay, that's cold enough. But no, we have to make it worse by saying, but it feels like minus five or whatever it is. I'm going to tell you right now, and I've said this before. Okay, I was in New Hampshire at Lake Winnipesaukee when it was 15 degrees below zero with a screaming 40-mile-an-hour north wind and gusts. Okay, so the wind chill was was wicked, but I'm sorry when you're outside and it's like, let's say, 10 degrees, and with the wind they say it'll tell you in the wind chill, just I don't know if it's exactly right, but whatever wind they say it feels like minus 15. If you've never been in minus 15, okay, you really don't know how that feels. And it's not the way it feels when it's a higher temperature with a strong wind. It just isn't. I learned that lesson when I was up there. Wind chill is fine. Okay, everybody wants to make it sound worse than it really is, but can we have the scientific numbers that make sense, that matter? And to me,
well,
that's the temperature.
you were at Lake Winnipesaukee with the minus 15. I've experienced 15 below zero, but in a different location. I was in Great Falls, Montana in
Oh,
1979, and it was cold. And in fact, I was at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Great Falls. The meteorologist in charge said, "Would you like a ride back to your hotel?" And I was very happy to say yes, of course. And then standing out there in 15 below zero temperatures while he unplugged his car, because the temperatures out there, I don't think it happens here in the Northeast, but out in the northern plain states where they get a brutally cold temperatures more often than not, in order to avoid your engine block cracking, you actually plug your car in to heat the engine block on those bitter cold nights. And I'm standing there like a popsicle, waiting for him to unplug his car in 15 below zero temperatures. It was not a lot of fun that night, Joe.
Joe LaPresta, you're absolutely correct, because that's how it felt with me. You can't even breathe it because uh, the air is so cold in your lungs that it burns. And all
Yep.
I and I could not get warm. I was outside, went I didn't ski, but I was with family members who went skiing. I stayed in the lodge. It was so brutal. When we got back to the house that evening, no matter what I did, I just could not get warm, and it was, it's a horrible feeling. It really is a horrible feeling. And I actually went to bed and slept like 14 hours because it was just physically it just did not it didn't do me any good. Let's put it like that. All right, so you know what? We're going to wrap the show up a bit early tonight because Joe and I have been racking our brains out for the better part of the last 2 weeks dealing with all the weather that's been around, and we've got a few more days ahead of us. So let's end it here. And you had you said you haven't had dinner yet, have you?
No, we had a late dinner,
Oh, okay. All right, very
and
good.
the dinner led into Joe and Joe, and now from here, this Joe is going outside to do some scraping and also to dump the garbage in 24-degree temperatures. So
Yep. All right. Well, have fun. I don't have that problem here tonight. It's just the cold. All right,
thank you.
folks. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. So we'll be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll have our ideas, maybe firmer ideas about the chance for snow late Thursday night into Friday night, and the weekend, and the long range, and everything else that goes with it. Thanks to all the super chat hits tonight, right, Joe?
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. And according to my count, we had 143 likes. I'm holding the bell, Joe, and it is not. I mean, there is a. You could see
I
that there's
just
a
I just
clapper,
heard it. I just heard a little bit again.
but there is a clapper. I'm not. I'm not
Yeah, no,
doing
I'm
any.
sure. Like I said,
Oh
I could do my harmonica.
my God! It's a ring of a different type. Somebody is calling.
Yeah.
All right.
Leon Probitsky, Doug Crumb, Brandon Dar.